Hello everyone, I'm Jyotika. I welcome you to my channel Excelling Psychology. This is the third part of my video lessons on the Andrade Doodling study, which is a part of the CIE AS 9990 Psychology curriculum. In the first part of the lesson, I had explained the study as per the syllabus requirements. The first link in the description box will take you to that video. In the second part of this lesson, I have evaluated the study as per the syllabus requirements. The second link in the description box will take you to that video. In this part, I discuss paper 1. In the upcoming final part, I will discuss how the candidate should attempt paper 2 of the AS Psychology examination for this study. I have already covered all these parts on my blog in a single post. My blog is called excellingpsychology.blogspot.com. Those of you who learn better by reading can skip this video and visit the blog. As you can see in the images in front of you, there is not only text on the blog I mentioned, but there are also illustrations for you to review the material you are reading and to remember better. If you are planning to watch this video entirely, let me tell you that I have based it completely on the lesson in my blog. So if you want to open that and keep it in front of you as you watch this video, that might be helpful to you. I've added the blog lesson as the first link in the description box below. Coming to this video now, in this video, I will be explaining how you need to approach paper 1 of the AS examination and how you can prepare for it given this particular study, the Andrade Doodling study. You need to watch this video only once, that is all the extra time you need to give, and then you can use the lesson on the blog to prepare for the examination. If however you feel the need to review some part of this video again, you can come back to it or look at the transcript of this video that I'm attaching as the third link in the description box. You can even keep that in front of you as you watch the video. All the suggestions that I make in this video for attempting the paper are in accordance with the assessment guidelines on page 10 of the syllabus, and moreover from my study of the specimen mark schemes of past examinations and the candidate's booklet of model answers released by the CIE. The links for the syllabus and the specimen papers are included in the description box below. Why I am referring to my answers as suggestions are because, first of all, I am no authority on the answer papers, and more importantly, there is no single right or wrong way of writing any answer in the paper. Candidates are given the liberty to adopt their own writing style. Besides, most questions also give you an option to write, say, any 2 tasks out of all that were used in the study. So as long as you don't lose sight of the response criteria presented by the CIE, you are free to write in a way that is comfortable to you. I am going to present an approach that is the best in my opinion. I will be discussing some sample answers in this video after a brief discussion of the nature of paper 1. Since this is my first lesson discussing an AS study, I will discuss at length what the candidate can expect to do in paper 1. This in effect means a discussion of how you need to prepare for the examination or how you should be studying overall. If you are looking simply at going through some sample answers to questions, you can skip a few minutes into the video to the section where I begin discussing sample answers. You can definitely go through the syllabus to check out what is officially presented regarding assessment objectives. I will try to make it relevant and obvious for you by making an analysis of the specimen paper 1 released by the CIE. It is best that you keep it in front of you as I discuss. I am not putting up the paper in my presentation because I do not have the authority to reproduce it. From this analysis, I wish to show you exactly what kind of preparation you need to make for paper 1. Unless you see for yourself how CIE designs the question paper, you will not be convinced about the learning strategy you need to adopt. Okay, so let's begin. Basically, what we see in this specimen paper is that in paper 1, there are a total of 11 questions for a maximum mark of 60. You are given 1.5 hours to attempt the entire paper. The first two questions, questions 1 and 2, are for 1 mark each, and as you can see, they are purely factual one-liners. Here you can expect questions asking you to state an aim or a variable or a finding of the study, which you have to report very simply as you remember it. The next question, number 3, has 3 parts, A, B and C. Here the marks allotted to the question increase from 1 to 2 or 3 for a total of 7 marks. So this is where you begin to show your understanding rather than your factual remembrance of what you have learned. Here you are expected to explain and describe rather than simply state answers. So what is expected is that you understood the reasons behind how different elements were adopted for the study, and you need to be able to communicate them clearly. You might be asked to explain why a particular control was employed, or what was the reason for undertaking the research, or why a task was designed in a particular way. You will be able to answer these questions only if you have an understanding of basic research methods and have used that knowledge to understand the nature of the given study. If you have only read an overview of the study, you will not be able to answer why type of questions. The next question, number 4, has 2 parts, A and B, for 2 marks each. This question challenges your understanding a step further than question number 3. Here you are asked to think of possible outcomes if the methodology of the study was altered in some way. So you need to not only have an understanding of the study and the research methodology used in general, but also a good understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of different elements of different research methods. For instance, if you were to answer how the doodling study would be affected if a random sample was used, then you should know how a random sample gives an advantage or disadvantage to a study more than what a random sample is. The next question, number 5, with parts A and B, makes for a total of 7 marks. In this question, we see that there is again a purely factual question, but more facts are asked for, so it makes for a total of 3 marks. Besides, there is a question where the candidate is asked to compare approaches, so that is one more area besides research method that you need to study well. Question number 6, with its 2 parts again, is mostly descriptive. The 7th question is a little different from what we've seen so far. Here the candidate is being asked to apply the findings of a study to a very specific problem. From the candidate's point of view, this is nothing novel because while preparing for the evaluation for the study, the candidate does study a few areas of its application. Here, however, the candidate has to be adept at moving away from the comfort of writing exactly what he or she has prepared for and responding exactly to the requirement of the situation described in the question paper. The 8th question again we see is purely factual. The 9th question returns to approaches. The 10th question has part 1 based on description, part 2 of this question, and the 11th question entirely for a total of 18 marks are based on evaluation. Okay, finally, we have taken an overview of the entire specimen paper. What do we need to take away from this paper is that for about 38 marks out of 60, that is about 63% of the paper, we need to study and understand the research papers, link them to research methods, and link them to the approaches that they are derived from. For the remaining 22 marks, a significant 37% of the paper we need to be able to evaluate the research studies. So what should your preparation be like? Definitely, you should give a majority of your time to understanding the research studies. That is, studying whatever references you are using to understand the research paper. Before doing this, however, you need to make sure that you have a thorough understanding of all the research methods and approaches listed in the syllabus, what they are in depth, along with the strengths and weaknesses of every element of each one of them. Preparing the evaluation of each study is what you must obviously prepare after all of the above, because without having practiced each one of them, you will not be able to evaluate correctly. You may end up just memorizing the evaluation of every study. In working terms, this means that you first complete a thorough preparation of what is presented on pages 19 to 21 of the syllabus, followed by the approaches listed on pages 15 to 18 of the syllabus, just the top sections which mention the approaches and their main assumptions. These assumptions are the framework from which you have to prepare a generic understanding of the approaches, and then you can move on to a preparation of every single study, the explanation, and then the evaluation of each one. Now in this section, I'll discuss with you a few questions that could be asked from the present study. I have created these questions as samples, and you can create many more such questions yourself if you take the specimen paper as reference. This kind of an approach is an excellent way to prepare after you're done with your study of the understanding and evaluation of the paper. Let's start looking at sample questions. My approach is to focus more on how the answer was derived, because the material for the answers I've already explained in the first two parts. Besides, I'll also discuss some common mistakes that candidates make while answering questions. If you feel that you need more time to read the questions and answers on screen, do make use of the pause button. Here's the first question on the screen, which is asking for one aim of the study for a mark. How do you answer it? Well, we know that there was a single aim in this study to show that doodling helps increase attention for boring tasks. That is exactly what you need to mention, as you see on the sample answer on the screen. No need for operational definitions or explanations here. Some candidates do end up making that mistake. Also, always take the maximum marks allotted to a question as your guideline. A 1 mark answer does not require that you put in too much time and effort into it. Here's another 1 mark question where your task is even easier than the previous. You have to only choose the correct answer, not even state it. So if you've prepared correctly, there is no way that you can falter here. Before proceeding, I just want to remind you that if you're finding the pace of the video is too fast, you need to really read the answers, take your time to understand them. Please make use of the pause button, because if I give too much time to you to read every question and every answer as I am discussing, the length of the video will become very unmanageable for me. Okay, so please see to it that you customize the video as per the time needed by you. Okay, now we come to the point in the paper from where candidates start facing difficulty in answering the questions which demand more than factual statements. Let's look at such a question first. Explain why the study was carried out. This is a 2 marks question. You will be able to answer this question well if you know and if you have good practice in stating your answers precisely and effectively. I'll show you what I mean by that in the answer. First, the question is so framed that you need to explain what the study intended to prove. Now, since we see that this is still about the aims of the study, but the marks allotted have increased, we see an indication that our answer needs to be detailed. An explain question demands elaboration. more detailed answer than just a statement, which can be done easily by connecting the aims to their operational definition in the study. Explain does not mean that you make your own interpretations or start putting the aims into simple language. You have to elaborate from the study itself. Let's look at the answer now. We see the aims explained in operational terms. They are not only about the psychology being investigated now, but about how specifically they were seen in the study. Besides, they are broken down to the monitoring and recall separately to avoid missing out anything. Candidates often make the mistake of answering like what you see on the screen now. As I mentioned, no interpretations or simplifications needed. Let's look at the next question now. Here we are being asked what the participants were told, meaning that we need to focus on the instructions of the study. We need not write the instructions verbatim. That will not indicate about what we have understood from the study. We need to link the instructions to the question presented. Okay, so what you need to think is where in the instructions was anything mentioned about why the study was conducted. Now let's look at the answer on the screen. I've broken it into 2 points as a means of presentation so that the 2 different statements of instructions stand out separately. In the first statement, we see that participants were asked for 5 minutes of their time, though this does not seem to indicate anything about the purpose. That is exactly what we want to show, that the purpose was obscured from the participant. Now, if we were to write this directly, that the aim of the study was not conveyed to the participant, that would not get us any marks because we have not specifically answered the question which has asked us for instructions. Always keep in mind that we need to answer as per the question asked. We have to address what is asked in the question. We cannot ignore what is asked. Okay, so let's look at the answer again. In the second statement, we see that the participants were told something about the purpose of doodling, which was only one aspect of the study. But nonetheless, since it did indicate something about the purpose, it does answer the question that has been asked. So basically, we've mentioned those parts of the instruction that address the purpose of the study. Coming to the next question now, let's read it first. Here you need to be able to reason. And how will you develop your reasoning for such a question? By understanding your lesson on research methods correctly. Why complete or partial deception may be used in a study is explained there. Once you have understood it, you need to link it to the study. Okay, we'll now look at the answer. Again, the answer is broken into 3 statements for presentation. All the 3 reasons discuss possible confounding that could have occurred had the participants not known about the purpose of the study. The specific term for what the question is asking you, as you would know from basic research methods lesson, is demand characteristics. Candidates also present other possibilities they can imagine. As long as they can present them clearly, it is correct. When we state what would have happened had a task not been designed correctly, or had a control not been maintained, or had an ethical violation been made, when we reason using counterfactual thinking, we communicate our understanding of the study very clearly. One mistake candidates often make here is to state something that is very obvious without justifying it. I'll give you an example on the screen. As we see, the candidate would answer, if participants were told the purpose of the study, then doodling would have not affected their performance as it did. Doodling would not have impacted attention. See, this is obvious. The question is why, not what. The question is to explain, not to state the fact. Avoid this kind of tedious answer writing that goes nowhere. Coming to question 4a now, similar to the previous question, this one needs a good understanding of research methods. First, we'll read the question. Here again, we need to think what would have happened if. In this case, it is about the use of a different set of participants, namely children. Firstly, regarding the marks allotted to the question, though it's 2 marks, we see clearly that we have been asked to address one methodological problem. We stick to what is asked in the question. 2 marks for one issue simply means that we elaborate on it rather than stating it factually. The next important word in the question is methodological. There can also be ethical issues or issues of psychometric soundness. Here we see that we need to address what problem would come into the procedure of the study had children been recruited. Okay, so let's look at the answer now. Here we see how the task in the study would have been affected. Tasks are a part of the method of the study, and the problem with method is what we have been asked about. Children's attentional capacity and their ability to process information is always questionable, so that can be one problem. As we know from our understanding of research methods, particularly sampling, that when it comes to any mental capacity, children may not be fully developed to exercise it. Here, candidates make the mistake of presenting any possible issue that they can imagine. Say it's an ethical issue, so the candidate would write, children might have been affected by the deception used in the study. See, not only is this answer a poor one, it's badly written, more importantly, it addresses an ethical concern rather than a methodological one. If you want to score well, your answers have to be relevant. They have to be related to the question asked, and for that you need to read the question word by word. Let's look at question 4b now. This is like a converse of the previous question. Though it's not about just any advantage of recruiting child participants, it is specifically about what advantage to application on recruitment would be, if child participants were recruited. Application, as we know, refers to usefulness in real life situations, preferably everyday ones. So we look at the answer now. The mistake candidates make here is again answering randomly, just ignoring what is exactly asked. So candidate might write, if child participants were used, that would increase the representativeness of the sample. See, this is true, but it is not correct because it does not answer the question that has been asked. Coming to question 5a now. This is a purely descriptive question. As you see, the only practical thing we need to keep in mind here is that it is allotted 3 marks. So if we can present 3 points of conclusions, that will be good, because we do see in the specimen mark sheet that often every point corresponds to a mark. So do read the answer on the screen carefully. Here, as far as I have experienced, some candidates just give a one-line conclusion. I'll reiterate here, make it a point to justify the marks allotted to a question. It's not like you're deliberately stretching the answer. See, the same question is sometimes asked for 1 mark, sometimes for 3 marks. This is deliberate because for some answers, the examiner wants to check your precision. For some, she wants to check your ability to explain. You need to develop all kinds of thinking of psychology when you study. The different marks allotted are just an indicator of this. Now let's look at the second part of the question. Here we need to know our approaches well. We are explicitly asked to use the present study as an illustration for our comparison. The question that arises is whether we need to use a study from the other approach to illustrate that one. While yes, you can do that, I find that it makes the answer unnecessarily lengthy as per the marks allotted. So I haven't done that. It's your choice, your writing style. Let's look at my specimen answer. I don't see much to discuss here except that we need to keep in mind that every point justifies 2 marks, so we should avoid getting into long-winded illustrations from the study. For example, I mentioned divided attention in the first point. If instead of that I was to write how doodling impacts attention that is divided between daydreaming and listening to a boring message, that would be unnecessarily long and add nothing important to the point, which is only talking about the mental process investigated. It does not require operational definitions. One surprising yet common mistake candidates make here is to present their answers for only one approach rather than both which have been mentioned. They totally overlook the learning approach in this case because they are so busy elaborating on the Andrade study examples that they have learned, or because they have lost track. Something they just lose track while answering what they began with because either they're so busy looking at the cognitive approach or the Andrade doodling study, they have forgotten totally that learning approach has been mentioned in the question. That is why practice is very important. It helps you plan the answer when you see a question rather than going into the frenzy of coming up with an on-the-spot answer. The next question is about aim. I have deliberately included this question to contrast it from the first question we discussed. Here you can see how our answer changes when the command words change and when the marks to be justified change. Okay, so let's look at the answer. How has it changed from the first answer? We've elaborated on the aim. We've not just stated it like we did for the first question, 1A. And I want you to look at the nature of the elaboration. It is not a mere repetition of the first sentence. Rather, it adds from the study an important detail that helps understand the first sentence better. As far as mistakes are concerned, candidates make 2 kinds of mistakes here. One is simply stating and restating the aim to make for 2 sentences anyhow. Another mistake they make is to try and present 2 different aims of the study by breaking down one into 2. The question asks specifically for 1 aim for 2 marks, so this answer won't score. Now coming to the second part of the question, here we are asked for two results corresponding to the aim we just mentioned. Now here's something worth thinking. What if we mentioned only monitoring or only depth of processing as the aim in the first part? Would we be able to answer this question? No. So what can we do, to avoid getting stuck? One, when it comes to presenting a single aspect of the study, always try and be as comprehensive as possible. Second, when it comes to a two-part question, do read both parts before answering because both are bound to be interdependent in some way. Let's read the answer now. What you need to observe here is that facts, the numbers, are very important when it comes to findings. Yes, you need to put the findings in your own words. In fact, the question demands an explanation. However, you always have to first present any figures related to the findings. That is correct practicing in reporting in psychology. Also, I have written what the figures are indicative of so that they are linked to the aims of the study that we just mentioned in the previous answer. The mistakes candidates make here is to avoid writing out figures, mainly because they have not practiced their lesson enough, so they don't remember. Besides, their answers are barely linked to aims. They are presented matter-of-factly. Let's come to question 7, which I have taken up from the specimen paper 1 released by the CIE. We ask for an application of the results to a specific problem, and we do just that in the answer. There's nothing to discuss here. Just make sure that you mention the results and then present the application. The mistake candidates make is to state the application directly without stating the results. That does not link the application to the results. Here, since we've been discussing only the Andrade study, we've mentioned the results in previous answers. In the actual paper, that won't be the case. There'll be just one or two questions regarding the Andrade study. So our answers should be comprehensive. They should be all together. The 8th question is regarding the controls of the study. When we have to explain controls, what do? We always discuss the extraneous factors that were prevented from confounding the study. That's what I've done in the answer. On a side note, you can see I've highlighted the chief points in the answer. Always do that. It makes your answer very readable. The mistake you must avoid here is to elaborate on controls by describing their nature or how they were implemented. The chief concern with controls is always their effectiveness and not their procedure or their implementation. The 9th question combines research methodology with approaches. Take a look. The key point of this question is that we have to present strictly one example, as I have done in the answer. Candidates do find it difficult to reason for such answers. The easiest line of thinking is to come up with the main benefit of using lab experiments, and that we know is control. Then you need to think whether the cognitive approach would require control-focused studies. If so, why? That will get you to your answer, and finding how control was exerted in the Andrade study will give you an example. The mistake candidates make is to simply state the benefits of laboratory experiments without linking them to the cognitive approach in any way. You can see that on the screen. Such answers are partial at best. Coming to the 10th question now, which is the last one to come from the explanation section. Here we are asked for two dependent variables. Though there's nothing peculiar about this question, we see the command term outline here. I hope you've studied your command terms well. What is the term outline suggestive of? That we need to describe the answer in detail. No need to explain. Just state as much as we can from the study and as much as is relevant. In the answer, you can see that I have included operational definitions because that makes the dependent variables as clear as possible. What you need to avoid doing here is to become repetitive or generic, as I've discussed for similar answers earlier. Coming to questions now which students find particularly challenging, those related to evaluation. The first of these is an 8-mark question that asks for a specific number of strengths and weaknesses in the study. One thing to be noted here is that the question asks for at least 2 strengths and weaknesses, which means that the candidate can suggest more. I strongly advise here that the candidate stick to only 2 strengths and weaknesses. Why? Because it is not good practice to sacrifice breadth for quantity. Writing more strengths and weaknesses will mean that you will elaborate less on each, and the command term is discuss, not state. So you're likely to take your answer in the wrong direction. Let's look at the answer now. The important thing is to notice the organization. See, I know you need more time to read this answer more carefully, so please read it on my blog, or you'll have to pause here for quite a bit and read the answer. What I need to discuss right now is that you can see clearly labeled strengths and weaknesses, each elaborated to justify their share of 2 marks, each connected clearly with the study, not stated generically by any means, chief points of explanation highlighted, and no unnecessary elaboration. Do read material like this carefully and incorporate all such important writing strategies into your own writing style. A poor answer commonly found here is one which, as I mentioned previously, is not elaborate. What such an answer conveys to the examiner is that the candidate has merely memorized the strengths and weaknesses of the study from one source or the other without understanding any of them. Okay, because if you had understood, you would have explained it. Now we come to the answer with the most weightage, the 10-mark essay answer. Let's look at the question first. It's very briefly presented, giving the candidate a lot of freedom to decide on what to present and how to present it. It is for questions like these that candidates need a lot of clarity and organization, which only comes from very good practice. The precision of the question makes it easy to practice for every study. Make sure you have practiced the 10-mark evaluation for all of the 12 studies in the syllabus. Let's look at the answer now. It's a long one and you will need to read it again, so just look through it quickly right now. I'd like to remind you again that this answer is available on my blog excellingpsychology.blogspot.com. It is exactly the same answer that I've presented there, so you can review it there. The important points to be noted are, in terms of content, we are covering both strengths and weaknesses. As I mentioned in part 2 of the lesson right at the beginning, we are not finding faults in the study. We are making a balanced evaluation of it to make the organization effective and very easy for me as a writer. I have followed the approach of the syllabus, taking one element at a time as applicable to the study and evaluating it in separate sections in the answer. Very importantly, since this is an essay, it is particularly important to make key points prominent. It is taxing for the examiner to find relevant points in long answers. Other rules of answer writing apply as for previous answers. The typical mistakes candidates make here is to write a poorly organized answer, jumping randomly back and forth between strengths and weaknesses. Here what the examiner will understand is that the candidate has roughly remembered some points which he is presenting arbitrarily to make up for the required length of the answer. A genuine analytical ability is not conveyed at all. It is similar to the one I mentioned for the previous answer. Okay, that's the end of part 3 of the lesson. In part 4, we'll look at how you can prepare for paper 2 of the AS examination for this study in a similar style to the one in which we have discussed this paper, paper 1. Now, what do you as the learner need to do after watching this video? I strongly recommend creating your own questions, looking at the different requirements of the syllabus and answering them, not orally but in writing. Such an exercise will make you very, very confident about answering the exam paper. Also, try to create a few questions for paper 2 and answer them before I put up the next video so that you can then match your answers and check where you tend to make mistakes. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch this video. Do visit my blog for this lesson and many others relating to psychology. The link is in the description box. If you want to know more about me, the information is on my blog. Besides, if you have any questions about this lesson, you can ask me right here or in the comment section on my blog. If you have any questions relating to psychology, you want explanations of some concepts or have some career related questions or need some help on personal issues, you can contact me on Quora. I keep answering such questions there. Again, I'm posting the link in the description box. Do not forget to like this video. If it has been helpful, do share it with your friends looking for help in their preparation just like you, and do subscribe to my channel for more such lessons in the future. See you again soon. Goodbye.